Oh, don't concede. I want to play my Watcher.
Stinging cold.
For today's video, we're going to be taking a shot at an archetype that I was dying to try out after I saw the reveals, and that is Lissandra. Now, there's a number of different flavors. I think you can play Lissandra. You can play her with Ionia for the retreat-return combo to burst speed in the Watcher. You can play her with Shurima and Talia because of all the landmark synergy. For me, right now, I have paired her with Shadow Isles, and I'll talk about why in just a moment, but really excited to give her a go because I think she's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I do want to start by prefacing this build might not be a finalized version. I also truly believe this won't end up being a competitive version. I'm actually not convinced Lissandra can be truly competitive in terms of like tournament performance, but it's better than you might think at potentially climbing the ladder as long as you take into consideration the meta on the ladder. And so that's actually going to explain a lot of my card choices because right now we're new in an expansion. And so there's like 3 things that you should be expecting right now. 1, people trying to race up the ladder so that they can get to master, check off, you know, okay, I've made it, and then they can play some fun decks or whatever. And so the people doing that are usually playing either aggressive decks or tried and true decks like Twisted Fate Fizz. So you need to expect to run into those decks even still on the ladder. They're popular. The other ones are going to be aggro decks, but kind of by proxy. So this is what I call the people experimenting. And so you're going to expect to see some Lissandra decks, and you're going to expect to see some Azir decks. And I say aggro by proxy because a lot of the new tools that are in Shurima are very aggro friendly, and I'm thankful for that as somebody who enjoys playing aggro. But you know, Renekton and all of these other really neat Shurima cards are very, very powerful, and so you should expect to run into them. So you have to have a plan for aggro twice, basically. And then the last one is like crazy combo decks, kind of like what we're playing right now, and so you need to also have like some panic buttons for against those. And so when I say crazy combo decks, I'm talking like Kindred stuff, I'm talking you know, Timelines, Ledros into Dreadway stuff. Those are also really popular right now, and so you have to have a plan. So with all of that in mind, and I had to frame it because that's important for explaining why my version of Lissandra looks the way that it does, we're now going to dive in. So right out of the gate, we have 3 Frozen Thralls. This is something you very much want in your opener so that you can get the on-curve play of Inquisitor into a Thrall, because turns out 8/8s with Overwhelm around turn 5 are pretty good. So you run this for sure. It's also a nice cheap investment for speeding up your Lissandra levels. Now there's other ways to get it done where basically because of Trundle, you can level her up right at round 8 in many cases as well. But this is really like your cheap early investment. You want one of these on 1, 2, somewhere around in that area so that you make sure that you get those nice kind of 4 free triggers when you need them so that you can close out the game. All right, next up, Sentry. This is just about early blocks and card draw. Again, you got to plan for aggro, standard card. Tavern Keeper. Tavern Keeper here is your anti-aggro card, and it helps block fearsome units, and the 3 health on it is nice against some of the overwhelm stuff. Heals your nexus. Tavern Keeper. Lissandra, whole point of the deck, but also not a bad early game stall card because she's got tough, so she can also soak up some blocks pretty effectively. As far as defense goes, she's nice. She does spit out another Frozen Thrall, and sometimes if you've got too many of them early on, playing her can clog up your own board, which doesn't matter early. Like early on, you're barely going to have any units anyway, so clogging up your own board then doesn't matter. But if she spits out a Thrall and then you're rolling into like the rounds 10 or 11 and you know, haven't hit a Inquisitor to make your Thralls pop out, when you get to the point where you're playing your top end, there can be times where you're a little cramped for space, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, next up, 3 copies of Avalanche, 3 copies of Blighted Ravine. Did I mention you have to plan for aggro right now? These help you get it done. Like, you just nuke the board over and over again. In these early rounds, like, that's your goal. your thralls aren't going to get hit by avalanche. Now, at some point, I think avalanche might get toned down. I'm coming around on Blighted Ravine. The heal is nice. Hit your own nexus after the fact, so you're never really truly topped off at 20. But this dodges other protection effects pretty well, so you don't have to worry about deny or things like that, because this just happens when the countdown triggers. It doesn't go on the stack. There's no response. It just is a thing. It's delayed, but it's a very satisfying effect. And so like long term, I think this one might be the one that sticks, but right now I'm straight just running 3 copies of both. I can see an argument that later maybe gets made about if you cut avalanche, maybe you add weirding stones so that you can ramp a little bit more. Like that's a possibility. I could also see an argument to be made for replacing it with either harsh winds or flash freeze if overwhelm starts to continue to rise in popularity and the traditional go wide aggros, so discard aggro, TF Fizz, a lot of Azir decks, things like that, if those lose popularity and it goes to more vertical aggro is what I like to call overwhelm, then these becoming some sort of frostbite effect makes sense. Catalyst, we like healing and we like playing expensive things, so we're running 3 copies of Catalyst. Inquisitor, this is here for speeding up your thralls. You want them to come into play as soon as possible. And then like worst case scenario, it's a mid-range body that you can use to block after you've blown up the board of all the weenies. Maybe this cleans up one of the other remaining units. Trundle. So the reason that I paired Trundle with Lissandra is honestly Ice Spike more than anything. I mean, the 4/5 regeneration is a beautiful blocker. I don't know why I always call this Ice Spike. It's really Ice Pillar. So I'm sorry. Ice Pillar. Whatever this thing is, this giant shard of ice is one of the easiest ways that you can level up Lissandra if you don't have that turn 1 thrall, because it refills 8 mana. So when you get to round 8, it's not uncommon, for example, to drop your pillar and then follow it up with It That Stares, and then that makes your Lissandra either level if she's on the board, or it makes it so that she does level when you play her. So it's pretty straightforward, but it's also very relevant. Next up, Withering Wail. Did I mention aggro? Yes, if you think I'm insane, let me tell you, like it matters. We're running Avalanche, we're running Ravine, we're running Wail. We want to nuke the board over and over. 1 Atrocity to help as a finisher, 2 copies of Vengeance. Depending on the popularity of Timeline's Ledros, this could end up becoming 3 Vengeance. You need to have an answer for the Dreadway portion. So if you're not familiar, people will play concurrent timelines, then they play Ledros. The play effect goes on the stack. It transforms into Dreadway, threatening a 1-turn kill because it's going to deal half your health and then double that damage. So if you can kill the Dreadway while the effect is still on the stack, then you at least stop yourself from dying. I mean, you still have to deal with the fact that you just took a ton of damage, right? But you can interrupt the combo. So if that ends up being even more popular than it already is, then I could see making this actually just become a 3rd Vengeance, or maybe this goes down to 1 Ruination into a 3rd Vengeance. But right now we're running 2. Now, the other reason we're not running as many is because if you have a leveled up Lissandra, you can sometimes anyway here, you can just save yourself because your Nexus has tough. So if you're at 10 health and they do the Ledros thing, which is going to do 5, and then Dreadway then doubles it back to 10, you end up taking 9 and you're still at 1 because your Nexus has tough. So I feel like the 2 is fine for now because you have this backup plan. But again, if that deck skyrockets in popularity, then you just start planning around it, right? So 3 copies of It That Stares. This is, again, more AoE, but also it's kind of a mirror tech. So like if your opponent has a head start on some of their frozen thralls, or if you need to clear up your own frozen thralls to make room for the Watcher, playing It That Stares to blow up your own landmarks or blow up your opponent's landmarks can be very relevant. So I'm currently running 3. I don't think it's going to necessarily stick long term that this is 3. I can certainly see some other options be considered. If you're curious what ones I have considered, I've considered one copy of Rasa. Again, if the aggro decks start to go more vertical and you find yourself needing ways to like kill a Darius or something, Rasa is actually not half bad, but you need you need something to die. And so like that's the problem, right? Yeah, we don't have a lot of sacrificial lambs in this list, so Rasa didn't make the cut this time. Uzgar is the other thing I had considered for those more vertical style aggro decks, because the challenger and the regeneration on a big body is very relevant. And so if you don't want to run It That Stares, Uzgar I think is a fine fill-in. And then the last options are either She Who Wanders or Ledros, but we're already running so much AoE removal that this felt redundant on the top end. And honestly, I think the It That Stares gives you more versatility than this one does, which is why I chose this one over this. It's also an 8 drop specifically, and I wanted to try to find things that costed 8 for the Ice Pillar combo. Like that part was very important to me. I wanted to play Pillar into another 8 drop so that you've already got your Lissandra ready to level if you didn't hit that turn 1 thrall. So that's why this did not make the cut. Similarly, Ledros is, you could jam in one Ledros and I would not judge you for it. And because we're also running the one Atrocity, it's a good backup win condition. You know, I could see cutting one It That Stares for a Ledros, but again, I was just trying to make sure I had enough 8 drops to make that happen. So Uzgar again is currently my other front runner for that slot. And then rounding it out, we have Ruination as another panic button. Again, you could cut this down to 1 in favor of Vengeance if you want, and I don't judge you. And Spectral Matron. So the other reason I wanted to run Shadow Isles is that once you've created the Watcher, if you play Spectral Matron and you copy the Watcher, you force them into a position where if they're sitting back on mana, so let's say it's a mirror match and we're sitting on Vengeance mana to deal with the Watcher that we expect to be coming, and they play Spectral Matron and they copy the Watcher and it makes the 1/1. Well, at that point now we have to answer the 1/1 like definitively, or it attacks and it does the exact same thing Watcher does and it obliterates our deck. So at that point, you know, in the mirror, because we don't have a lot of 1-drop pings, we would have to like spend Withering Whale mana and then pray we also have enough back for our Vengeance on top of it. And so the idea here is that Matron gives you the opportunity to threaten a Watcher, force them to respond. If they can't, you just get in there with the 1/1. And then also, if they do respond, if they've spent enough mana that you're now comfortable your big Watcher can get the job done, you can play that to re-threaten again, still get the deck obliteration. And if you play a Matron and they answer the 1/1 cheaply and they still have a ton of mana back, you just don't have to commit your Watcher yet. You can wait for another Matron to come up or wait for a more opportune time. Matron is a great way to threaten the Watcher ability without actually risking your only Watcher, because you only get 1, unless you're playing some sort of other deck, not this one, where you're using like counterfeit copies or something hilarious, then sure, by all means. But you know, now that I've said it out loud, that actually might be kind of a fun meme, if you will. But this is why I wanted to go Shadow Isles. It gives you access to extra healing, gives you access to panic buttons like Ruination and Vengeance, and then Spectral Matron is a great complement for the deck. So I think that this build is far from settled, and there's a lot of ways that you can adjust it for the meta, but this is the one we're going to go with. So we're going to go play a couple of games, and hopefully we'll either see some thralls in action, or if we're lucky, we're going to get to see the Watcher obliterated deck, because I want to see the animation. So anyway, let's just jump into the games. Interesting. Kindred, Elise. Some mastery icons going on over there. And Piltover and Zon, huh? I'm wondering if this is actually the Karina Control Timelines deck, and they're just using those 2 champions as the up front. But we're gonna go ahead and see if we can deal with this list. We are not necessarily
Come closer.
in the worst position.
Bite.
When it comes to the Ledros
Split her out from the
shenanigans.
darkness.
I think we're just gonna eat this and do this. Mostly just because we do have some potential answers, probably not as many as we would like. I think that more decks, if this archetype is what I think it is, I think more decks, more archetypes are going to need ways to just deal with it on 9. And that means fast speed removal, obviously. Now we're gonna have a choice to make here. We actually might go with the Inquisitor instead of Trundle here on 5.
This one's on the house.
And then we do also have this available as well. But we might just bank spell mana here.
A tribute to the Spider God.
Because at the moment, anyway, I don't necessarily think that we need to do this because it doesn't clear the Elise. Which is the real concern. And then we're just going to turn around and take damage ourselves. Okay, well, this changes it. So they're going to get a leveled Elise. We don't get the healing here, but we clear the spiders anyway. And so here's the timelines. So it is, in fact, the deck that I was worried about. So, again, we have potential answers.
Smooth as silk.
You have to be in a position so that you can kill the Dreadway when it comes down.
They retreat.
Let's hope they don't have a zero cost activator. We're gonna take the shot at getting ourselves
I do not linger.
a throw. Yeah, I was gonna say I will absolutely do that. So we do actually get a Thrall. We get the dream from the turn 1 Thrall start perspective. Let's go ahead and get the Trundle down here as well. Still haven't drawn a potential answer. All right, we're gonna ship it. Now they could have blocks and damage, right? Like they can take these two out with blocks and static. But since we have the backup Trundle, I wasn't as worried about that. Also could be like a Withering Whale. So I think what they're trying to do right now is save the Kindred, because if they kill this, then Kindred marks here, and then they don't have to put Kindred into harm's way. But we push more damage as a result. And again, we have our backup Trundle. So it wasn't necessarily the worst trade on our end. We're on a bit of a clock.
Tear them apart.
So they're going to go ahead with the Doom Beast here. See what kind of other options they end up with. And then what we are going to do is develop a Sentry. Mostly because if Kindred does any sort of marking, we prefer it to be on this as opposed to our 8/8. So they didn't have the self-sacrifice effect, so they are going to hit this.
Light the signal fire. The trolls
We'll
are
go ahead, play our Trundle.
ready, boy.
So we're gonna lose this. We're actually... Oh, you know what? We needed this Trundle for another pillar. We're so close to being able to pop off the Watcher. Like, we can level Lissandra. So we can level Lissandra and we can get as far as 3 8 drops next turn. The problem is then at 9 we just turn around and lose because we did not yet top deck like a vengeance. I mean, we have a ton of Behold available.
I'm gonna make a U-sickle.
So again, we could go with that. I think we just take the leveled up Lissandra here. The Lissandra granting our Nexus tough is kind of a big deal. So I think this is technically the better way to go. As again, we're thinking about like the Ledros issues. So what we were most worried about there was like ruination. All right, this at least threatens lethal. Again, we expect them to have an answer. Could be healing. Number of potential options available to them, but if it's healing and it's not too much, we might still get away with a win via Ice Shard. No, we get there. Wow, go Thralls. That felt satisfying. I wanna play another game here. Interesting, because I see Draven and I see Darius, which usually says overwhelmed to me, but I also see Targon. This goes for sure. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of like actually having Lissandra on curve, so I think this goes as well. I'd much rather find like a frozen thrall that you can drop turn 1. I mean, that's the appeal of her, is that you get at least one going on turn 3, but I guess we're gonna have her anyway. Probably take open attack damage. No, okay, well,
Nothing escapes.
we'll D up with this, take the 4 total, draw a card, get a Tavern Keeper. I mean, honestly, we have a lot of healing here. Maybe we don't even Tavern Keeper here.
Ages past, yet
Since there's not much of a rush. The sound effect from Thrall, by the way, is just so satisfying. I guess it's not just the Thrall sound effect. It is indeed the countdown sound effect. All right, so they're doing this to kill the Lissandra, but that's gonna go down in damage. We could pop the whale to heal some, but I think this is going to just be a catalyst turn. Because again, we have the backup Lissandra, so saving this one isn't necessarily a priority. So I think that we take the healing here. It'd be really nice if we could find like an avalanche.
Let me show you what I can do.
Less fine now, but Catalyst was nice because this means that we can go Tavern Keeper, Tavern Keeper. We run 11 main deck board-wide effects for like nuking things, and so far we've only found the whale. Feels a little bad, but I guess these count as well, so really we're running like 14
I love a taste of the action.
of them. So we want to block here and we want to block here because it soaks the most, and then pop a whale. Now lots of mana available for them in terms of buffs. Now they're not the Freljord variety though, so we don't have to worry about the +8/+4, but we do have to worry about stuff like another transfusion, so that pushes a good chunk of damage for them. Wow, they had all 3 transfusions, so we're gonna go down to 7 here, unless we're gonna go down to 5. So we're gonna go down to 5, which is a little concerning because of cards like Decimate. But the good news is that we likely wipe their board this next turn with an It That Stares.
Safeguard our homes.
Mostly just taking this action to stall, see what else they play. All right, so now we are definitely worried about the Decimate. You still have to take this play, and then just hope that we top deck healing.
Alert the village.
And we do. So we are safe from a Decimate now and should be in a good position to kind of control the rest of this game. Interesting. I actually think that it might be worth it to play the whale. So like I want to play other cards, but the minute I go down in mana, they could then drop the Decimate, right? So actually, as weird as it sounds, I think that it's worth it to pop the whale right now. Just to get out of Decimate range. I think this turn is a whale and Lissandra play, because we're gonna level her up this next turn anyway. Also might feel counterintuitive. Well, I was gonna say it actually might be worth it to blow up our own thralls, but we need at least this one to pop. I think we just take the attack. Let's just play it safe here. I kind of want to just see the Watcher animation is my problem. So let's do, I guess this. It doesn't matter what it is, right? It's just gonna become a 1/1. But we're just trying to level up Lissandra, so we get the Watcher in hand, and then also give our Nexus tough here.
You will do as I command.
Oh, don't concede. I want to play my Watcher.
Stinging cold.
Who's gonna close up?
All right, we're gonna end this round. I want to do the Watcher, if they'll let me. Anyway, so we're gonna do this, and we're gonna destroy all landmarks.
You will obey me. Remember the objectives. Our arrangement is complete.
Play the Watcher. Again, we could just win by attacking, but I want this out front because I want to see the animation. I want to see the animation. YouTube deserves the animation. Thank you, whoever you are, stranger,
Ends here.
for not conceding. We just get burned out here. Wow. So they just do it like that. But we got the animation. That's all that matters. All right, 2 games in, lots of fun. We even got the animation. You can kind of get a feel for the deck, so hopefully you enjoyed it. Deck code will be in the video description, like always. Link to Mobalytics. I guess now is the part where I say if you're new, consider subscribing. Join the Discord. That's also in the video description because I've been trying to use it more and more lately, and I want to certainly utilize that for you know, deck sharing and shenanigans and whatever. So join the Discord, follow me on socials, blah blah blah. But you know, thanks. And you know, it felt really good to say it again last video, so I think we're bringing it back. So we're gonna go back to the old school outro, and I'm gonna say until next time, may you walk on warm sands.